Today in geometry, we're going to look at section 3.5. We're going to look at graphing lines. Again, this should be a review for us from Algebra 1. Hopefully we did this in Algebra 1. Today we're going to look at graphing lines in slope-intercept form, along with standard form, and then also horizontal and vertical lines. So let's just recall, what is slope-intercept form of a line? Y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope, b is the y-intercept. And remember that y-intercept, this is where the graph crosses the y-axis. So this is where your graph crosses the y-axis. All right, so our steps, if we want to graph in slope-intercept form. Step number 1, you plot the y-intercept. So you put where it's crossing on the y-axis. Step number 2, you plot the next point or points using the slope. Step number 3, draw a line through the points. Always make sure that your graph matches what your slope is. So if your slope was negative, then make sure from left to right that your line is decreasing. If your slope was positive, make sure that from left to right your graph is increasing. Then standard form of a line. Remember that standard form of a line looks like ax plus by equals c. So x and y are on the same side of the equation together. X is always first. And then it's equal to some constant. In order to graph in standard form, step number 1, you find the x-intercept. This is where the graph is crossing the x-axis. Okay, so this is crossing x-axis, or your x-intercepts. And if it's crossing the x-axis, that means that y is 0. So to find your x-intercepts, you simply plug 0 in for y into the equation, and you solve for x. Step number 2, you want to find your y-intercept. This is where it crosses the y-axis. And again, if it's crossing the y-axis, your x is 0. So in order to find the y-intercept, you plug 0 into your equation for x, and you solve for your y. Step number 3, you plot those two intercepts and draw your line connecting them. Okay, so let's start out. Number 1, y equals 3x minus 1. So first we have to determine, is this in slope-intercept form or is this in standard form? This has y on a side all by itself, so this is slope-intercept form. If it's in slope-intercept form, we can quickly identify our slope and our y-intercept. So our slope, m, that's the number in front of x, that's the coefficient in front of x. In this case, it's 3. So my slope, remember, is rise over run, so that's the same thing as saying 3 over 1. My y-intercept is the number being added or subtracted, and so that's negative 1. So to graph this, we always start out with the y-intercept when we're graphing in slope-intercept form. So my y-intercept was negative 1. So I go to negative 1 on my y-axis. Remember, your y-axis is your vertical axis, and I make a dot. From that dot, I do my slope. My slope was 3 over 1. It's positive, so I go up 3, right 1. So from negative 1, I'm going to count up 3 spaces, and then go over 1 space. And I'm going to continue that until I go off of my graph. So I'm going to go up again 3 over 1. Now I'm going to go back to my y-intercept, negative 1. I can go the opposite direction. So in order to go the opposite direction, I would go down 3 and left 1. Now I have enough points to make a nice line. So I draw a line through those points. Remember that you must put arrows on the ends to show that it's a line and then it continues on. Okay? All right, so that was the very first one. Let's look at number 2. Number 2 says y equals negative 3/2 x plus 2. Again, this is in slope-intercept form. So we want to identify our slope and our y-intercept. Our slope, in this case, is negative 3/2. Our y-intercept is positive 2. So graph it. Go to your y-intercept, make a dot at positive 2 on the y-axis, right there. My slope this time is -3/2. So -3 means instead of going up, I go down 3, right 2, make my dot. But I could keep going down and over until I run off this graph. So now from that point, I'm going to go down 3 again and over 2. Now let's go the opposite direction. So go back to your y-intercept at +2. Instead of going down 3 and right 2, I'm going to go up 3 and left 2. There's my point. After we have done that, now we want to draw the line through those points. So if I draw the line through those points, and then again put arrows at both ends. And again, remember how I told you to make sure that your slope matches the graph. So in number 2, we said we had a slope of -3/2. So from left to right, my graph should be decreasing. From left to right, my graph is indeed going down. So I know that I have graphed a negative slope. In example number 1, our slope was a +3. So that means from left to right, my graph should be going up. It should be getting bigger. And in fact, from left to right, my graph is getting bigger. So at least I know that I've graphed a positive slope and a negative slope correctly. Okay. Right, let's go to the back. Number 3, 5x plus 2y equals 10. This is in standard form. Okay. Standard form, I'm not finding my slope. We haven't learned how to do that yet. So I need to find my x and my y-intercepts. Remember, to find the x-intercepts, I plug 0 in for y and solve for x. So I would have 5x plus 2 times 0 equals 10. So really, I can just cover up that 2 times 0 because 2 times 0 is just 0. It goes away. So really, I'm solving 5x equals 10. And so I get x equals 2. So I have an x-intercept of 2. Now step number 2, I want to find my y-intercept. Y-intercept, I plug 0 in for x. So I'm going to rewrite the equation I started out with. 5 times instead of x, put 0 in, plus 2y equals 10. Again, 5 times 0 is just 0. It's not going to change anything in my equation, so I can ignore that. And I have the equation 2y equals 10. That's what I'm solving. So to get the y by itself, divide by 2, and I get y equals 10 divided by 2, 5. So I end up with an x-intercept of +2 and a y-intercept of +5. So let's make sure that we plot these correctly. X equals 2, so I go to where x is 2 on the x-axis, and I make a dot. Y equals 5. So y is my vertical axis, so I go up to +5 on the y-axis, and I make a dot. So when I'm graphing in standard form, I'm only going to have 2 points on my graph. So now I draw the line through those 2 points. And again, arrows on both ends. Let's look at number 4. Number 4 says x equals 4. Notice I do not have a y. There is no y value, which means this graph does not cross the y-axis. Anytime I have an x equals, okay, x equals some number, this is going to be a vertical line. In order to graph a vertical line, I just go to where x equals 4. Right here, x is 4. Where else does x equal 4? X equals 4 up here. X equals +4 down here, right? Everything along this line, all of my x's are going to be 4. My y values are all going to be different. So I simply draw the vertical line with arrows at both ends. Let's just do a quick recap of slope. So what would the slope of a vertical line be? Remember, these were ones that we're supposed to memorize. I can go up as much as I want or down as much as I want, but I don't ever go over. So let's say that my slope, I went up 2, but I don't ever go over any, 0. Remember, we cannot divide by 0 in math, so this is undefined. All vertical lines have an undefined slope. Remember the pictures that I gave to you. This is a little guy on his bicycle, like looking at the cliff, thinking, I'm not taking my bike down that cliff, right? So we have to remember how to graph vertical lines, right? X equals 4, I just go to positive 4 and draw a vertical line all the way through that. Let's look at our next example, number 5. 2x equals y plus 3. All right, so I notice that this one has x and y on different sides of the equation. However, they're not together, right? So since I have an x on one side and a y on the other side, the 3 is on the other side with the y, I have options. I could go ahead and put it in standard form, find my x and y intercepts, or I could put in slope-intercept form, find my slope and my y-intercept. This is a complete preference. Usually, if it's not in standard form, it's easier to put it in slope-intercept form, just because you might end up with fractions in standard form. And I know how much you all love fractions. You know that I love them. But to graph, it's much easier to graph in slope-intercept form when it starts out this way. So I want to get the y all by itself. It has a positive 3 over there with it. So I need to move the 3 to the other side. So then I end up with 2x minus 3 equals y. And remember, by our symmetric property, I can flip those and make it say y equals 2x minus 3. Our symmetric property of equality lets me flip them. And so now it's in slope-intercept form. We can quickly identify the slope and the y-intercept. Our slope is a positive 2. My y-intercept is a negative 3. I'm making a mental note to myself. I have a positive slope, so that means when I'm done with this graph, from left to right, my line should be going up. So remember, to graph this, I start with my y-intercept, negative 3. So I go to the y-axis, negative 3, and I make a dot. My slope is 2, okay? Remember, that's the same thing as saying 2 over 1. So from negative 3, I would go up 2 spaces, right 1 space. And I'm going to continue that until I'm off my graph. Up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. But remember that I could also go back to my original starting point, the y-intercept at negative 3. And instead of going up to right 1, I could go down to left 1. Those are all the points that we can fit on this coordinate plane. Draw the line through all of those points. Arrows at both ends. Check to make sure that it does in fact have a positive slope like we intended. From left to right, this graph is increasing. So we should be good. Number 6, y minus 1/2 x equals 0. Again, I notice that x and y are on the same side of the equation, but the constant that they equal is 0. So I want to go ahead and put this in slope-intercept form. Again, get the y by itself. So I need to move the 1/2 x to the other side. It's a negative 1/2 x, so in order to get it to the other side, I would add it. So this would become y equals 1/2 x. I want to identify my slope and my y-intercept. My slope is the number in front of x, 1/2. My y-intercept is the number being added or subtracted to x. There's not 1, so that is 0. So that means that this graph, my very first point, my y-intercept is at 0, so it's at the origin. My slope is 1/2, so from 0, I go up 1 over 2, make a dot. Then I continue to do that until I run off my graph. Up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. But now I go back to my original starting point, my y-intercept at 0, and I'm going to go the opposite direction. Down 1, left 2, and I'm going to continue this until we get off of this graph. Now I have all of those points. Draw the line through your points. Again, making sure you put arrows. And again, I'm going to check to make sure that my graph makes sense. I said I had a positive slope. From left to right, my graph is in fact increasing. All right, let's look at number 7. Y equals -3. I see I do not have an x value. So no x means the graph never crosses the x-axis. This is a horizontal line. So these, again, should be easy ones to graph. So I go to y, where y is -3, right here. At -3, my y is -3 here, as well as here, here. At every single point here, y is -3. So I simply draw the horizontal line all the way through -3 with arrows. And again, let's review what is the slope of a horizontal line. Do I go up or down any to get from this point to another point on my line? No, so that would be 0 over, I could go over however many I want. I could go over 4. 0 divided by 4 is 0. So remember that the slope of the horizontal line is always 0. We are memorizing that. Again, the pictures that I showed you, this is our little guy on the bicycle just cruising along, nice and steady pace, right? He doesn't have to go uphill. He doesn't have to go downhill. He's not looking at a cliff. He's just going straight along a nice, smooth path. All right, the last one that we're going to graph today, number 8, says 2x minus y equals 4. And notice x and y are on the same side of the equation. It's equal to a constant number. So this is in standard form. So standard form means I need to find my x and my y intercepts. To find my x-intercept, I put 0 in for y. So 2x minus 0 equals 4. That 0 pretty much just goes away, and I'm left with 2x equals 4. I want to solve this for x, so divide everything by 2, and I get x equals 2. So there's my x-intercept. Now we want to find our y-intercept. We put 0 in for x, so the original equation said 2x, so 2 times 0 minus y equals 4. 2 times 0 is just 0, so I can ignore that, and I'm left with negative y equals 4. I want to get y all by itself, so here I have to divide by -1, and I get y equals -4. Now I plot these 2 points. So I go to where x is +2, and I make a dot. Where y is -4, I make a dot. Draw the line through those 2 points with arrows at both ends. Okay, so that is today's lesson, graphing lines in standard form, slope-intercept form, along with horizontal and vertical lines. Again, this should have been a nice review for us from Algebra 1. Your homework today, again, is in Envision. I had to go to Algebra 1 Envision to find an assignment for graphing for you. So in Envision, this will be actually in Algebra 1, lesson 2.3, but then next to that, it will say 3.5, day 1. So you're going to log into Envision. This has already been assigned to you. Algebra 1, 2.3, and then 3.5, day 1 is what it will say as well. You're going to complete this assignment in Envision. After you've submitted it, you're going to take a screenshot. You're going to upload that screenshot in Canvas under the 3.5, day 1 assignment. Again, I will be grading in Canvas, so please make sure that you upload that screenshot in Canvas for me. Enjoy the rest of your day.